Good morning, everyone. As we begin today's meeting, we would like to acknowledge that we are gathering here today on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and before them, the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron, and Wendat. We also acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and other global Indigenous people that now call Brampton their home. We're honored to live, work, and enjoy this land. Once again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our meeting of Brampton's Committee of Council. All members that are present here today are in front of you in chambers, and joining us remotely are Councillor Palashi, Councillor Fortini.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and Councillor Medeiros.
And Councillor Medeiros. Members that are absent are Councillor Keenan and Councillor Power. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome back Your Worship, Mayor Patrick Brown, and my fellow colleague, Councillor Power, from their trip to Pakistan. Seeing the current situation in Pakistan, to say that we were worried about your safety is an understatement. It is sad to see the demise of democracy in Pakistan with everything that's happening. So my sympathies with everybody that is affected by the situation. And we hope that the rule of law will prevail. But welcome back, Mayor Brown. Our next item is approval of the agenda. If any members wish to add a business item to today's meeting. I know I have one item that I've requested the clerk to add. Okay. It is an item regarding a discussion around the city's current policies around, our city is a breastfeeding friendly city, but there are some policies around that we need to discuss. So I've added that item under corporate services.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that'll be proposed discussion item 9.3.1.
9.3.1, thank you. And are there any others?
There's more.
I don't see the screen here.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Brar is on the board.
Councillor Brock?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to add a National Nursing Week announcement.
Okay.
So through you, Mr. Chair, that would be proposed announcement 5.2. Next on the board is Deputy Mayor Singh.
See, Deputy Mayor Singh.
I'd like to add two items. One is correspondence in camera about an identifiable individual, and the second is identifiable individuals as well. And I've talked to the legal as well.
So those would be.
So just there's two items regarding
Yeah,
identifiable individuals?
One is correspondence and one is about an identifiable individual.
Two separate items? Okay, thank you.
What are the item numbers?
Through you, Mr. Chair, those would be proposed closed session items 15.1 and 15.2, both for open meeting exceptions under Section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and identifiable individual.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Vicente on the board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I wish to add an in-camera discussion item on proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land. I did speak with the city solicitor. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, that would be 15.3 under closed session under item C, which is a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board as set out by Councillor Vicente.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And any online?
I do not see any more online, but just a few updates from the clerk's office. First of all, Councillor Power is in the session, so he was in attendance as we started the meeting.
Welcome back, Councillor Power.
There's a few other additional updates to today's agenda. We have, in regard to delegation item 6.6 from Sylvia Roberts, this is in regards to 10.2.6, the Brampton Transit 5-year business plan. There is a presentation, a set of slides from Sylvia that will be displayed during her delegation. We've added correspondence under 10.4.1, which is correspondence regarding item 10.2.8 on today's agenda, a staff report on the LRT extension study update. The additional correspondence we've identified as 3 and 4, 3 from Joseph Mancinelli, LIUNA, dated May 9th. 4 from Andrew Salomon from the High Rise Group, dated May 9th. And we also have correspondence that will be identified as 12.4.1 on today's agenda from Susan Moss. This is in regard to item 12.2.2, the surplus declaration of approximately 0.9 acres of land adjacent to 4 Imperial Lakes Drive.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So we have a motion moved by Councillor Broad to approve the agenda. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, and the motion carries. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? And seeing none, the clerk will so note for the meeting minutes. Committee, as part of our consent motion process, I will read each agenda item that is subject to consent motion, and any member may verbally identify the item to be held for debate during the meeting. Any item not held for debate will be considered as part of the consent motion and voted on for approval. I'll start reading the relevant agenda items, and members can identify any items that are to be held for debate. So, the first one would be item 5.2.
Through
What is
you,
that?
we
That's just
generally
an
don't put announcements on to consent.
Okay, so item 7.2, staff report, recommendation report for city comments on Bill 97, Helping Home Buyers Protecting Tenants Act 2023. It's consent. Item 9.2.1, staff report. Hold. Staff report regarding request to begin procurement for digital billboard advertising on city property, held by Councillor Singh. 9.2.2, staff report regarding 2023 final tax levy and bylaw. That's consent. 9.2.3, staff report regarding Building Code Act, annual report for the fiscal year 2022. In consent. 9.2.4, staff report regarding the launch of Corporate Policy Innovation Hub. Consent. 9.3.1, could you please read the item, Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, 9.3.1 is the added discussion item regarding city policy regarding breastfeeding.
Thank you.
Normally,
That's
that added discussion item would
held
be on
by-
consent.
Held by myself. 10.2.1, staff report regarding initiation of subdivision assumption for Mattamy, Mount Pleasant Limited, under the registered plan, south of Mayfield Road, and east of Chinguacousy Road, in Ward 6. That's in consent. 10.2.2, staff report for initiation of subdivision assumption for Argo Steels Limited. It's in Ward 4, and that is in consent. 10.2.3, staff report regarding 2023 special event downtown road closure for Farmers Market, Ward 3. In consent. 10.2.4, staff report regarding special event road closure for 2023 Rotary Ribbon Roll, Ward 3. In consent. Item 10.2.5, staff report regarding request to begin procurement implementation of physical traffic calming measures citywide. In consent. Item 10.2.6, staff report for Brampton Transit 2023 to 2027 business plan is held for delegation. Item 10.2.7, staff report regarding request to begin procurement for various transit goods and services. That is in consent. Item 10.2.8, staff report regarding light rail transit extension study update is held for delegation, and so is item 10.4.1. Correspondence regarding item 10.2.8 is also held for delegation. Item 11.2.1, staff report regarding the City of Brampton and participation partnership to provide active lifestyle park components in Bramley Limited Community Park, Ward 7, is held for delegation. Item 12.2.1, staff report regarding real estate transactions executed by Administrative Authority for January 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2023. That is in consent. And item 12.2.2, staff report for surplus declaration of approximately, okay, it's held for delegations anyways and held by Councillor Singh. And the remaining items are 15.1, 15.2, and 15.3 that were added to the agenda. So, Mr. Clerk, would you like to summarize?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to members of committee, the following items will be part of the consent motion if it's approved for approval this morning. 7.2, a staff report, recommendation report for comments on Bill 97. 9.2.2, a staff report on 2023 final tax levy and bylaw. 9.2.3, a staff report on the Building Code Act annual report for fiscal 2022. 9.2.4, a staff report on the launch of the Corporate Policy Innovation Hub. 10.2.1, a staff report for initiation of subdivision in Ward 6. 10.2.2, staff report initiation of subdivision assumption for Ward 4. 10.2.3, a staff report on the 2023 road closure for the farmers market downtown. 10.2.4, staff report for the special event road closure for the 2023 Rotary Ribbon Roll. 10.2.5, a staff report for the request to begin procurement for implementation of physical traffic calming measures citywide. 10.2.7, a staff report for a request to begin procurement for various transit goods and services. 12.2.1, a staff report on realty transactions executed by administrative authority for the first quarter of 2023. Those are the items to be included in the consent motion.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And I'll have a motion moved by Councillor Vicente to approve the consent motion. All in favor? And any opposed? Thank you, and the motion carries. Moving on to announcements. Announcement 5.1, Brampton on Stage, June to December 2023 season launch. And we have our team from Jocelyn Johnston and Stephen Shipper. The council sponsor for this item is Regional Councillor Santos. Okay, and you will be needing some more time, and we will indulge you at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Tour. Good morning. On behalf of everyone in performing arts, please accept these heartfelt thanks to the Mayor and City Council, CAO Caladine, Commissioner Boyce, Senior Manager, Cultural Services, Kelly Stahl, for all your support. Our all-star team of staff continues to lead our sector of Ontario civic theatres, and we couldn't do so without your wise investment, which enables us to build an inspiring performing arts community that reflects the spirit and diversity of Brampton. In addition to Council's enlightened support, we couldn't flourish the way we are without the confidence and support we receive from our cherished audiences and donors and sponsors. To each of them, we say thank you. We're here to announce our June-December 2023 season, and here are some highlights. Our summer in Garden Square is jam-packed with movies on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and live concerts on Friday night. All of that is free, and most of it is suitable for all ages, with themed activations for young people beforehand. Our autumn season kicks off with Monsoon Sound, an evening of South Asian hip-hop, followed by Flowfest, a celebration of Afro-Caribbean drumming. Both these events are grassroots Brampton, meticulously curated by Brampton's finest, Monsoon Sound by Noise, and Flowfest by Grammy Award winner Larnell Lewis and the equally brilliant Joy Labs. These two events were both launched last year to tremendous enthusiasm and deep appreciation. They were built to grow, and with your continued support and attendance, they returned to flourish in 2023. October 12th is opening night of Hamlet, starring Ahad Raza Mir. Ahad is a Pakistani-Canadian actor, as modest as he is magnificent, and as you can see from his photo, which graces the cover of our brochure, Ahad is easy on the eyes. Representation matters. Seeing someone who looks like Brampton in a role not typically associated with South Asian actors will break stereotypes and barriers and showcase the immense talent that exists within the community. We know we can't accommodate all of Ahad Raza Mir's 2.9 million Instagram followers, so we highly recommend you, your friends, everyone here and listening online, purchase the remarkably affordable tickets to Hamlet as soon as possible. Don't worry about your schedule. You can always exchange your tickets if necessary. Just secure your tickets soon because, as Hamlet himself says, the readiness is all. Soon after, we'll welcome the Canadian premiere performance of Broadway sensation Ava Noblezada, Tony-nominated star of Miss Saigon and Hadestown. Ava Noblezada also played the title role in the 2020 film Yellow Rose alongside Lea Salonga. The Rose Orchestra will join with Classic Albums Live to present the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, at which no one will be lonely because it's certain to sell every ticket. Brampton Music Theater's The Wizard of Oz will remind us there's no place like home. All through the fall, and indeed throughout the winter and spring, we present our unique and amazing series called This is Brampton, which showcases the entrepreneurial capabilities of Brampton impresarios as they curate and present local and regional singers, musicians, and comedians. And all year, we offer an incredibly robust education and outreach program, which includes Center Stage to nurture high school talent, and Heartbeats, the only performing arts intern and co-op program for Black and Indigenous youth in Canada. In 2022, the Globe and Mail wrote, "Performing Arts Brampton continues to mix its main stage season with a season of eclectic series in its studio space curated by local artists and impresarios. Reflecting both Brampton's entrepreneurial spirit and its multicultural mosaic, it fits perfectly with the division's new 5-year strategic plan announced last spring to build a diverse and inclusive performing arts community." It's now my pleasure to introduce Jocelyn Johnson, Manager Theaters, who exemplifies the excellence of all staff in performing arts and also the organizational strength the City of Brampton can achieve when it nurtures and develops its staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, Mayor and members of Council and senior leadership team. I'm thrilled to be here today to accompany Stephen Schipper as we share the upcoming season and some exciting changes in performing arts. So Council did approve our first strategic plan for performing arts in April of 2022. The plan includes the vision, mission, values, strategic priorities, and guiding principles for programming, presentations, and operations for the next 5 years. Annually in May, Performing Arts announces the next season of programming that includes This is Brampton, Arts Adventures, guest presentations, co-presentations, and the Garden Square Summer Series. Historically, the season launches announced programming that spans from June to May of the following year. This year, we're planning announcing the season in 2 parts, June to December 2023 and January to May 2024. This change positively impacts many aspects of performing arts operations and programming, including being more responsive to audience purchasing trends, better alignment with the municipal fiscal year, increases flexibility to engage with artists and presenting partners on their timelines, ensures that marketing materials remain fresh, increasing the frequency of engagement with patrons, increases exposure for local artists, arts organizations, commercial presentations through improved guest presentation brochure deadlines. This year, along with launching the upcoming season, we are thrilled to announce a new citywide campus brand, Brampton On Stage, and a new membership program. These initiatives support divisional strategic priorities to expand community programming and outreach to deepen equity, diversity, inclusion, and access to our programs and spaces. Brampton On Stage is the new umbrella brand, celebrating and promoting all performing arts venues, programming across all venues. Our brand personality is intercultural, real, adventurous, vibrant, and dynamic. A website refresh is now complete, amalgamating all venue-specific information into one full-service website. The refreshed site is launching today as bramptononstage.ca, and it aims to improve the user experience and increase awareness of performing arts opportunities across the city. In 2022, feedback received from patron engagement and customer surveys helped to shape a membership model that is responsive to audience purchasing trends and offers an excellent customer experience. Our new membership program aims to support brand loyalty and increase accessibility to performing arts programs, events, and services. Patrons will accumulate points with each purchase and can redeem them for free tickets in the future. The 2-tier membership includes a free membership available to all ticket buyers of the Brampton On Stage season, and an encore membership for only $10 a year that accelerates point accumulation and provides early access to ticket sales and invitations to special events. I want to thank you again for your ongoing support of the arts in Brampton, and we look forward to seeing you at our venues soon. There are no questions. If I may request, the Director of Strategic Communications suggested that we might get a photo of you with your new swag bag, if you are so inclined to oblige us in that.
We would love to do that after we will take questions.
Thank you.
Councillor Santos.
Now So much, thank you through you, Mr. Chair, not so much questions, but more comments and saying congratulations on starting to implement that awesome performing arts strategic plan. But also I'm very excited that we're highlighting a lot of the strengths and local strengths of artists here in the city of Brampton, especially the diversity we have. It's going to be incredible to watch Hamlet at the Rose with this particular actor who is playing it, and I can't wait to get some tickets for it. But in addition to taking that photo with the swag bag, I would encourage my colleagues on council to help us in promoting the incredible lineup for the Rose Theatre and Performing Arts this year, not just in terms of performances and movies in Garden Square, but these are going to be local artists in Brampton that we're going to be highlighting this year, and we want to make sure that they get the support and the place is packed. So quick question, I guess, would be, can we have promotional flyers so that when we're out at events or in the parks talking to seniors or cleanup events in different languages or link to a website, share with them the shows that are coming up and encourage them to actually attend?
Certainly, through the chair, yes, absolutely. We've got a robust amount of marketing materials that are in the works now and will be coming out over the next couple of weeks and the next couple of months as we officially announce the season. So we'll make sure that you have both digital and physical copies of all of that.
And thank you, Councillor Santos, for your kind words.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited. I'm excited for this year. Okay.
Thank you, and I want to say this is a wonderful booklet. This is so beautiful to see, the way it's done, so whoever did this, really good job. And I guess comps that you're looking for, or thank you so much for doing this. You know, you gave me a book full of ideas for someone that's newly married. These are all date nights that I can do. Like, you made my day. Like, you made it much easier for me. I've already earmarked, you know, Immigrants with Attitude, you know, by Sunny Chal from Lal Button. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing them. I've already marked that, and I would encourage other people, whether newly married or been married for a long time, or, you know, looking to get married. These are good date ideas. These are wonderful date ideas. Please go out and buy your tickets. Like you said, they will be selling out soon. So I'm hoping to do that today. And I guess we can go forward and take the picture. Thank you so much. And we have announcement 5.2 that was added by Councillor Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This week, we are celebrating National Nursing Week all over the country to recognize and show appreciation for the incredible nurses who have been on the front lines of COVID-19 pandemic and who continue to work and provide care to Canadians. May 12th marks the anniversary of Florence Nightingale's birth, on which is also celebrated around the world as International Nurses Day. Nurses Week celebrates the perseverance and the dedication of nurses across the country. Throughout the pandemic and now, we have seen the everyday challenges that nurses face. and how they have to adapt to drastic changes, meet changing needs, and continue to do their work with compassion and care. We recognize the courage needed to care for patients and the dedication that they show by continuing to put their needs of patients first and advocating for them. So Brampton not only recognizes the invaluable work that nurses do, but this city is also committed to supporting nurses and supporting the healthcare. City Council recently approved a 1% hospital levy to support the redevelopment and expansion of Peel Memorial Hospital and a cancer care center that will be located at Brampton Civic Hospital. And I just want to say, personally, I've worked alongside nurses, and they have done an amazing job, and they continue to do that. So we just want to say, on behalf of the city, thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you, Councilor Broad, and I'm sure we all echo the same comments. Thank you to all the nurses that continue to work even past the pandemic. Next up, we have public delegations. So item 6.1, delegations regarding a surplus declaration of approximately 0.9 acres of land located at 4 Imperial Lakes Drive, Brampton, in Ward 8. The item relates to staff report 12.2.2 on today's agenda. We can deal with that item in the agenda in agenda order unless committee wishes to deal with it after this delegation. And we have 2 registered delegations so far. The first one is from Sylvia Roberts, Brampton resident. Welcome, Sylvia.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts. This item was added to the agenda pretty recently. When I originally downloaded the agenda, the report for it wasn't even included. It's been put up that recently. Next slide, please. So while the staff report says it's suitable for low density, as you can see from this right here, which is from the region's MTSA plan, it's actually in the MTSA catchment area. Notably, a significant portion of the MTSA catchment area is occupied by the Catholic school, which is the large parcel to the north of it. Just to the west of it is a stormwater management pond. To the east is a community center. And then there's a bunch of single-family homes. There's not that much land to build on in this area. And so this is going to need to be one of those parcels to meet the density targets for it. The location is quite close to transit. I've measured it's approximately 400 meters from the planned BRT stop, which is close. But it's also nice because it's not right on the main street, which means it's much quieter and doesn't have the same kind of air pollution if it was directly on Queen Street. The proximity to schools and the community center makes it an excellent location for family-sized housing. And if the city worked with the region, we could actually get some family-sized housing built, because the projects coming forward from the region of Peel are mostly for single people, but this location offers a great opportunity for larger family-sized units. I know the reason this is coming forward is because someone asked, hey, can we put a daycare on it? Having high-density housing and having a daycare are not mutually exclusive. It is entirely possible to put a daycare on the ground floor of a high-rise if it's designed from the beginning. And the Region of Peel is involved with operating daycares and providing housing, and so they could likely be quite good at that. And I think it would be an asset for the community, having a daycare that's right there, so you can drop your kids off on your way to rapid transit. That sounds pretty good and asset to all of the residents around it. And if you're looking for a place for your family, I don't know, across the street from a community center sounds pretty good. Schools that are close enough you can walk your kids to also sound pretty good. Next slide, please. So I would recommend that the city does not proceed with the staff recommendation on selling off the parcel, or at least delay the decision on this item until I can think about it some more. And that the city works with the region to develop family-sized affordable housing, which could be as an entirely social housing project, or it could be a mixed income project. There's lots of ways to do it. A daycare is a good use for the site, given its proximity to housing and amenities and transit, but it's also far enough. It doesn't have the noise and the air pollution from the road. And either the city could transfer it directly to the region, or the city could do a long-term lease. There's lots of ways to do it, but it's family-sized housing would be really good for the city on this. And I don't think selling it off to the public sector, especially given how much the city has lowballed the value of it, basically saying, oh, we think it'll be great for, we think it's suitable for low-density housing. The regional plans don't support that at all. It suggests it much higher. And so if you sold it off, assessing it for that, what's stopping the person buying it from 3 years down the line applying for a zoning bylaw thing, amending it, and then selling the parcel for a $10 million profit? I mean, if you're going to sell it off to the private sector, you might as well do the rezoning yourself, and then the city is pocketing the money as opposed to basically giving a gigantic bag of cash to someone in the private sector who happened to just say nice things, and convince you to do stuff that was not in the city's interest. Thank you. That's my delegation.
Thank you, Sylvia. I would say I do agree with a lot of your comments. Councillor Singh, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'll wait for the report, actually, so thank you.
Thank you. And the next delegation on this item is from Daphna, Program Coordinator and Analyst at Peel Alliance to End Homelessness. Daphna.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So good morning, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Daphna Nussbaum, and I'm here on behalf of the Peel Alliance to End Homelessness to address the City of Brampton surplus declaration of land located adjacent to 4 Imperial Lakes Drive. As the previous delegate noted, the close proximity of this area to major transit, schools, and recreation means the site is an excellent candidate for mixed income or family-style housing. From my perspective, we have a major homelessness crisis in this region, as well as an affordable housing crisis. Deeply affordable rental housing is out of reach for low-income and unsheltered individuals and families. Peel shelters are currently full and in overflow. The centralized housing list has over 28,000, and thousands more are in deep core housing need, including students, newcomers, and other marginalized groups. As the previous delegate suggested, the best use for this site is for public, and to retain it for public mixed income housing, including but not limited to rent geared to income housing and possibly units for supportive housing in collaboration with a supportive housing provider like SHIP. We'd also love to see housing for people off of the region's by name list, and this could be through provisions through Home for Good. So basically, we're echoing the recommendation by the previous delegate to talk with the region of Peel about building mixed income housing on this property by either selling or transferring it to the region or doing a long-term lease to the region. In either case, a child care facility could be included in that, and we're asking for a minimum delay for reconsideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daphna, for your delegation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, as this was public notice was given for possible delegations, I'll ask if there's anybody else who wishes to come forward to speak on this item. And I don't see anybody. We do have the additional correspondence reference this morning, 12.4.1 from, I believe it was Susan Moss, regarding this matter. And committee is free to either consider the matter now or consider it in agenda order.
Is there any will from the committee to?
Councillor Peleshi's on the board too.
Councillor Peleschi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to speak to the report.
Okay, so we could deal with the report at this time then.
So through you, Mr. Chair, Deputy Mayor Singh had identified he wanted to speak to the report too. So in terms of a speaking order, my advice would be Deputy Mayor Singh followed by Councillor Peleschi.
Okay, we can do that. So,
All right.
Deputy Singh, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand where some of the residents are coming from. Something I had also thought as well. I know that parcel very well, and I like the idea of a daycare there. But there's clearly I feel we could do more with that parcel. So I don't know if the solution is a high-rise, mid-rise, what that would look like, but I think staff can maybe take it back and see what we could do, and then we can look at declaring a surplus. I think right across the street of the seniors center as well. So if we're looking at some sort of affordable housing, it'd be nice to have it targeted towards seniors. I just came from the Peel aging group that meets at Flower City, and so it was top of mind for them. So I think just making it a better deal for the residents, I think I think we can do it. I'm okay with declaring a surplus and no issues with that, but I think we could get more value with the daycare, with some seniors housing, and other things. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Singh. And Councillor Palashi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just based off the delegation's comments, I agree 100%. I agree with most of what Councillor Singh was saying too. I don't know about declaring it surplus yet. I think us taking this back and looking at the potential for rezoning, and we're definitely in this business, so this is an opportunity for the city to get something in terms of the land that we have. I think it's odd that we're declaring land surplus. I don't recall really us doing that in the past based off of a request. It's not something that the city usually does, is sell off land. We typically like to own land, so I'm happy to refer this back to staff to come up with alternatives and the best use of this land prior to declaring it surplus. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Palashi. And Deputy Mayor Singh, you have the floor.
Maybe elaborating on Councillor Palashi's point, maybe we could look at a lease as well, like a long-term lease, like a 100-year lease as well, and maybe that might provide the most value for residents. But I think we could do something cool here. There's no denying that. BRT coming there. The community center is right there. It's a beautiful community center with the childcare. We're hitting a lot of check marks. So I think we just got to take this back and work on it a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Singh. Could we first have a motion to receive the delegations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we could do a motion to receive the delegation 6.1 and the correspondence 12.4.1, and then a motion to refer the staff report back to staff for further consideration.
Okay, so first we'll have the motion to receive the delegations. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Singh to receive the delegations. All in favor? None opposed? Thank you, and the motion carries. I have a motion forward, I guess, by Councillor Palashi to refer the matter back to staff. And all in favor? Any opposed? And thank you, and that motion carries as well. Thank you so much for the delegations for speaking on this issue. And
Councillor Powers' message, I just feel like he also supports it going back to staff as area councillor. He's just in the airport right now. Sorry, thank you.
Excellent, well noted, thank you. Moving on, next item is item 6.2, a delegation from Ken Zolotar, Manager of Stakeholder Relations, for participation regarding item 11.2.1, the City of Brampton and participation partnership to provide active lifestyle park components in Bramley Limited Community Park, Ward 7. Welcome, Ken. You have the you don't look like Ken. Ed, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Good morning, Mayor, members of Council, and fellow city staff. My name is Ed Fagan, Director of Parks, Maintenance, and Forestry. The Parks, Maintenance, and Forestry Division has been selected to partner with Participation to implement additional free and accessible park components within an existing park to encourage physical activity in nature and promote active and healthy lifestyles. Today we have Ken Zolotar, Manager of Stakeholder Relations from Participation, who will share insights of the organization and the benefits of the program. Welcome, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and good morning, Mayor Brown and members of Brampton City Council. There should be a presentation coming up shortly, so I'll await that before I get into the speech.
We'll bring it up momentarily, Ken.
Oh, okay, there we go. Wonderful. So yes, as aforementioned, my name is Ken Zolotar, and I'm the Manager of Stakeholder Relations at Participation. Participaction, for those who are unaware, was established in 1971 as a national nonprofit charitable organization that hopes Canadians get physically active through public education, innovative engagement initiatives, and thought leadership. Today, I'll talk to you about designing an outdoor space to increase physical activity participation among health equity deserving groups of all ages in Brampton through our Participarks initiative. Next slide, please. The Participarks project is fully funded by the Healthy Canadian and Communities Fund through the Public Health Agency of Canada. The purpose of this fund is to design a space where people can be active that is welcoming, inclusive, and accessible in consultation with local municipalities and local residents who face barriers to being physically active. Next slide, please. Participaction is partnering with 4 municipalities across Canada: in La Ronge, Saskatchewan, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Fredericton, New Brunswick, and in Brampton, Ontario. Parks and Recreation staff from each municipality have worked with Participaction to identify a suitable location for a Participark. Suitable locations have many of the following characteristics. They're designed in a demographically diverse neighborhood, they're accessible by public transit, and they are near other community amenities that are often used by health equity deserving populations, for example, schools, seniors residence, employment or settlement centers, and faith centers. Next slide, please. Participaction and the members of Brampton staff have identified the Bramalea Limited Community Park for the Participark design location. Bramalea Limited Community Park meets all the aforementioned criteria. It's diverse, it's central, it's near amenities, and accessible by many. Next slide, please. The Participark project, as funded through the Public Health Agency of Canada, is divided into 3 phases: design. So phase 1 is design, phase 2 is implement, and phase 3 is scale. We are in the design phase, which includes the following components: establishing a relationship with the local municipality, identifying a location. So those 2 things have been complete. And as we're looking forward, we'll be creating a network of leaders from local organizations that reach health equity populations. And so we'll be creating that network in the spring and summer of 2023. In the fall of 2023, we'll be hosting focus group sessions with this network and other local community groups about park design needs for the people that they work with and serve. And also in the fall, we'll be hosting a on-site community engagement day with residents at the proposed Participark location. So that community engagement day will involve music and food and games and activities, and an opportunity for residents to share their thoughts on how they would like to use the space in terms of how they are physically active. Following the focus group and community engagement sessions, Participaction and our design partner, Bean and Stock Natural Playgrounds, will share an initial design with the city and local leaders for input. That design will be reviewed, revised, and that feedback will go through 3 different iterations until there's that final design piece created. In addition to the final design, the blueprint, so to speak, the data from the sessions, so all of the gathered information from the focus groups and from the community consultations, will be shared with the council in a raw as well as a summarized research report form that you can use to inform other neighborhood park designs. Next slide, please. There are 2 main questions I've left unanswered so far. The first is, how much will this cost the city? And the second how will the Participark be funded and built? To answer the first question, there are no direct costs to the city for the design phase of the project. So coming into the fall 2023, there may be some indirect costs in terms of city staff time to coordinate logistics. The city may provide some in-kind support for the focus group sessions, such as a meeting room space, or on the community engagement day, such as providing a tent or a table or a chair to facilitate some of those interactions. In terms of how will the Participark be funded and built, I cannot confirm at this time how the Participark would be funded should the city choose to use those designs to create that park. I know that Participaction will be applying for the implement phase funding of the Healthy Canadian Communities Fund, so that application is coming up in the near future. And also, because this is a national initiative and Participaction as a national organization, we also have, we will likely have the ability to access federal infrastructure funding to further develop this project. Next slide, please. And that is it for my presentation. Thank you for your attention and consideration. I welcome any questions at this time.
Thank you, Ken, for your delegation. Mayor Brown has a question.
So I was a big fan of participation when it was a federal initiative. I think it's so critical we encourage healthy lifestyles, particularly in Brampton where, and frankly all around Canada we have rising rates of childhood obesity, but we also have the complication of diabetes in Brampton. It's why we supported the Healthy Lifestyles Initiative a few years ago when it was funded by the LIN. Is this still supported by the federal government? Is this an official agency of the federal government, or is it a reincarnation of that initiative that was so popular in the 80s?
So we are still funded through the federal government. We've just in this past budget cycle, we have for the last 5 years we've received funding, core funding through the Public Health Agency of Canada as well as through Sport Canada, and that funding for the previous 5 years was allocated at about $5 million a year. So about $25 million to support Participaction's total initiatives. And in this most recent federal budget being announced in March of 2023, that funding was renewed for the next 2 years. So Participation is funded by the federal government for the next 2 years for $10 million, so $5 million a year, so an extension.
And I see Councillor Santos, our chair of community services, is on the board, but I would suggest after she has spoken to other councillors that maybe we refer this back to community services to see how we can be supportive. Obviously, I love any initiative that's going to encourage healthy lifestyle and physical activity in our community.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Brown, and Councillor Santos, you have the floor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair, and echo the sentiment of Mayor Brown in terms of supporting initiatives to keep the community healthy and active. It's my understanding, I know that there's a corresponding report to this particular delegation, and I'm happy to receive the delegation as well as receive the report. I do know as Chair of Community Services, together with Vice Chair Councillor Brower, staff are working on looking at how we can support this program and looking at funding sources and funding opportunities as well. So I'll ask Acting Commissioner Chief Boyce if you could comment on that.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes. So there is a report that's up after the delegation. So again, the design phase would be free, just with in-kind support provided. And provided we go through, do the design phase with community consultation, then there will be the construction phase, which is anticipated to be 50% cost recovered, so 50% funded through the municipality.
Okay, and I guess we'll get more information when the time comes regarding that.
Yeah, through the chair, once the design is done, we'll come back with a request to begin procurement report for the construction. We'll have more details on the funding at that time.
Okay, so it sounds like things are moving along in supporting this particular program, and I was a fan of Participation. I've forgotten, so question to the delegation. What were the names of those two people again who wore the types of leotards?
I believe you may be referring to Hal Johnson and Joanne McLeod,
yes,
who were part of the Body Break program in the late 80s, early 90s.
I love them. I'd love to bring them back. Maybe they could come to the park if and when we open it.
That's an excellent idea.
Excellent. So I will, Mr. Chair, if there are no further questions, happy to receive the delegations as well as the corresponding report.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Santos. Seeing there's no further comments or questions, I have a motion moved by Councillor Santos to receive the delegation. All in favor? Any opposed? And thank you. That motion carries. And I also have a motion by Councillor Santos to receive the staff report accompanying this. So all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you. And that motion carries as well. Next item is item 6.3, a delegation from Nishka Gupta, President for SPARK, which is short for STEAM Projects Association of Research and Knowledge, regarding request for rental fees to be waived for a hackathon event on Saturday, May 20th, 2023. Welcome, Nishka. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Nishka. I'm actually the founder and president of a nonprofit organization that I started when I was just graduating high school. So to get into things, next slide, please. I would like to explain a little bit about who we are. So Spark has been running since 2018, but we became a nonprofit in 2020. We are made by youth for youth, and that's really special about us. So in terms of structure, we are actually a team of board of directors who are undergraduate students in university, and we teach and coach a high school team to host events in the community. And through this, we cultivate leadership within the high school students, and these events include hackathons, learnathons, and case study competitions. And within these competitions, we have an inclusive environment that fosters knowledge, learning within the STEAM field, that being science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Next slide, please. So far, we've had many different accomplishments all the way since 2018. So in 2018, we had our first ever hackathon. In 2019, we had another hackathon. In 2020, due to COVID-19 and the pandemic, we had to have our hackathon online. In 2021, we had our first ever case competition. And from 2021 to 2022, we actually hosted a podcast where we would bring in members from the community within the STEAM field to discuss their working roles. Next slide, please. So up to now, we've made a great impact, that being having $20,000 in prizes for over 500 different students that have attended our events. We've had over 100 mentors, over 20 workshops, and have had participants from over 5 different countries. So you can see that we've been making a great impact up until now, and we would like to carry this on forward. Next slide, please. So right now we have an event coming up on May 20th, and it's called a Learnathon. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a learning marathon where students are assigned an overarching problem and they're given a form of technology along with it. And with that, they are asked to create some sort of solution and present it in a science fair-like format. What's unique about this in comparison to hackathons is that students, while judges are going around, they're able to look at everyone's presentations. So in this way, they're able to learn from each other as well. Next slide, please. So currently, we've had a lot of progress in which we've had support from various different judges, from being business advisors, biological researchers, as well as engineering researchers. We have a couple workshops lined up with people from the machine learning world who are engineers and developers, UX, UI, software designers, blockchain backend engineers, and we have booths with topics ranging from robotics camps, trades and tech, as well as careers. Next slide, please. So far, we've actually had over $14,000 in donations given to us. And the unique thing about us is, since we are a nonprofit, we thrive on sponsorships, donations, and grants from the community. So all the money that goes into our organization goes back into the community. Next slide, please. So what I ask from you is to waive the rental fees associated with hosting the event at the City of Brampton. Next slide, please. So how does this benefit you in return? So the city will, in turn, like if supporting our organization, will actually promote EDIJ, that being equity, diversity, inclusion, and justice, because the events that we hold promote all of these values through including a variety of different students and encouraging them to pursue working roles in this field. As well as, by supporting our organization, you will foster a sense of community within Brampton and invest in future workers, because these students are the workers of tomorrow, so it's important to invest in them and actually help their working minds. And also, you will be reinforcing existing partnerships. We've actually been partnered with the City of Brampton, specifically the Brampton Entrepreneurship Center, ever since we started Spark. So we've had support from people like Jasmine Daniel, as well as Daniel Bishoon from the BEC from the very beginning. Next slide, please. And that is all from my end. Thank you so much. My name is Nishka Gupta. You can contact me at teamsparks@gmail.com, and now I can take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Nishka. I see Councillor Santos on the board. You have the floor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Way to go. That was really well done. Super confident, knowing your stuff. Incredible. With respect to the event itself, which space will you be using?
So there are a couple spaces, that being the atrium, the conservatory, and a few boardrooms.
Great. And so, and it's happening on a Saturday,
yes.
Correct? On May 20th, which is a long weekend. I don't think we have any events scheduled right now at City Hall. It's a time when it's closed to the public, and we sometimes have flag raisings, et cetera. Now, do we know how much that fee is to be waived for that day?
Can I ask Jasmine to just confirm the fee?
So $2,300 just for the day. Okay. And then happy belated Youth Week, by the way. And last week we actually opened up the Brampton's first youth hub at the Susan Fennell Sportsplex. Did you know about that space?
I actually did not.
No. So it's a youth hub, and it's 2,300 square feet. And there's a second youth hub coming next year / early 2025, which is going to be about over 12,000 square feet at Century Gardens. And I'm just flagging that because moving forward, I think that these youth hub spaces are perfect opportunities for events like this to support our young people, and certainly we do support our young people. And thank you for delegating and for hosting the event on the 20th. Procedurally, and $2,300 is not a lot of money, and I know our members of council will be supportive of waiving those fees, but procedurally, when somebody delegates to committee of council or council, the only thing that we can do is really refer it back to staff to come back with a recommendation. And so I turn to the CAO, I suppose, asking if we could please refer this back to staff to come back to council next week on how we could waive the fees for this particular event.
To the chair, happy to take that back and bring a report forward next week.
Awesome. It shouldn't take too long, right? No. Okay. So there you go. I'm happy to move through you, Mr. Chair, referral of this delegation back to staff to report back on waiving the fees to council next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Santos, and thank you, Nishka, for that delegation. I was looking at those photos and I could see some of my friends in those photos, and it reminded me that I've actually been to one of your events, Spark Hacks. So I'm very happy to see you host this at the City of Brampton, and we would be happy to host you here. Just last weekend we had a fantastic hackathon. Thanks to Jasmine and NS for helping out with that as well. And City Hall was buzzing with young people with bright ideas. I'd love to see more and more of this happening in our city, and happy to at any time support any of these hackathons, learnathons, any of these events that happen across the city. I know it makes a big difference to youth, and it's amazing to see what youth are capable of, like the amount of mentors you will be bringing to the city for them to speak with the students. Sometimes, even as counselors, we're not able to do that, so hats off to you and all the youth that's involved in this. So considering the motion moved by Councillor Santos to refer the delegation back to staff for next council, all in favor and any opposed? Seeing none, thank you, and that motion carries. Thank you, Nishka. Next up is item 6.4, a delegation from Todd Letts, the CEO of Brampton Board of Trade, regarding item 10.2.8, the LRT extension study update. We also have a related staff report 10.2.8 on today's agenda. We can deal with that item in the agenda order unless committee wishes to deal with it after this delegation. And I know after this delegation, we also have another one related to the same item, a delegation by Chris Drew on behalf of the Drew family. So welcome, Todd, and you have 5 minutes. Sorry, and Councillor Vicente, you have the floor.
Could move to add additional time for Mr. Letts.
Happy to do that. Do we need a motion for that, or? There's consensus, so. Todd, you're good to go.
Good morning, Chair Tour, members of council. Thank you, Councillor Vicente, and welcome back, Your Worship, Mayor Brown, Councillor Power, and Claire. We're so happy that you're back safe and after a successful trip to Pakistan, so welcome back. Mayor and Council, Chair Tour, the Brampton Board of Trade is, as you know, an independent nonprofit association of business leaders comprised of over 1,900 business owners and company representatives that employ 61,000 here in Brampton. The LRT extension is a very important investment in infrastructure for our city, and today we encourage Council to approve the recommendations contained in staff's update report. For more than a decade, the Board of Trade has been consistently strong advocate for the Main Street LRT extension to go to Brampton GO Station and beyond to the Caledon border. Our volunteers, who are business people from all sectors, from all commercial and industrial neighborhoods in Brampton, have put time in to analyze the reports, to interview experts, to discuss the path to LRT extension success, and have conversations with elected officials, relevant ministries, and Metrolinx. Being mindful that construction has a significant cost and disruption to business, the board has consistently encouraged council to put its best business case forward to attract senior level funding to support this project. From the business community's perspective, there are three key messages that we share with you today to help assist you in the approach to completing the extension. Firstly, Brampton's business community wants the LRT built. It wants it built because it will significantly improve Brampton's quality of life and economic prosperity for all of its citizens. The LRT will improve property values along Main Street. The LRT will attract investment, commercial and residential, along the corridor into our downtown. Already we're seeing development plans proposed by Greenwind, Sweeney, Rogers, and other job-creating public and private sector organizations. And it's not just downtown. We know that there are substantial benefits for employers and employees, commuters throughout the city. Having a north-south rail spine connecting Steeles to Brampton GO enables a redeployment of buses that are formerly on that route to east-west routes, making it easier to get to work, making life in general a lot easier for those in our commercial and industrial neighborhoods east and west of downtown. Because of the many LRT benefits, we encourage council to take an approach that makes it easy for the provincial and federal governments to say yes. And in that regard, we offer a second and gentle cautionary message to council concerning risk. There is a real risk that in the time it takes to present its best business case, the windows of current funding opportunity will close. And we have to be mindful of that. The message Brampton's business community wants to emphasize today is there is a sense of urgency. There is a big cost and a risk of failure by not presenting a plan that can be realistically funded. In its report, staff recommend further dialogue with Metrolinx with respect to the preferred alignment to be brought to TPAP and to report back in approximately 6 months. Further, staff seeks council direction to explore and discuss funding options with the provincial and federal governments. We support both of those recommendations. This is good. We do have a question, though, and these discussions, to what end are these discussions? What is the end objective of these 6 more months of discussion? The Brampton Board of Trade recommends that you go a step further. In your discussions with the senior levels government, please make the successful negotiation of a funding commitment a prerequisite before council chooses to move forward on a preferred option. Let's be clear, if there's no written commitment from the senior levels of government to spend 3 times more than necessary, for example, council should resist the temptation to pursue a partially tunneled option. Why are we recommending this? At our recent Municipal Issues Forum, we discussed a timeline and the optimal funding window available given upcoming federal and provincial elections in 2025 and in 2026. What we demonstrated is that there's a real risk that if council chooses to bring an alignment through TPAP without a credible commitment to funding, that the process could be set back by years, risking the money that is allocated for Brampton for this project. It may go to another community. There are other competing projects, and perhaps even requiring the alternate, more financially viable route to be taken through the same process again. So for the sake of jobs and investment, growth, and the success that this project brings, Brampton's business community asks that you please select a preferred alignment with a full funding commitment attached. And lastly, the Board of Trade encourages council and staff to be balanced in the assessment of the 2 options. Both benefit Brampton. The staff report correctly notes that both options are feasible, have benefits, but it does include a chart that uses color coding to make the surface option appear inferior. That's not the case. Many members of this council have already indicated that they won't say no to either option. It's a good thing. We welcome this open-minded approach. So as such, in reviewing the options, it can't be portrayed as though only the most expensive option is a win for Brampton residents and businesses. Either option would be a huge success. And the biggest win would be one that's actually delivered, an LRT extension that's actually delivered sooner rather than later. So in closing, I want to thank you, Chair Tour. I want to thank Mayor Brown, members of council, and staff for their hard work on this file. It remains one of the largest opportunities this council will see in this term to enable economic growth and job creation. This council has an important task in front of it, and the Board of Trade is here to help you, help guide you in these important decisions. Let's finish the job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd. I see I have a couple of speakers on the board. Councilor Vicente, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to thank you, Todd, for your delegation. I don't have any questions, but perhaps Mayor Brown does.
Passing it on to Mayor Brown.
Sure. You know, I think it's so important for the Board of Trade in the City of Brampton to advocate collaboratively together, using all our energy to get the best deal for Brampton. I think as many united voices is helpful. And a good example being how we're aligned about there should be a 50% federal and provincial contribution. If other cities, they look at Hamilton, where the entire cost was funded 50% provincial, 50% federal, in what world will we accept a third here? We're not second-class citizens in Brampton. And, you know, I was relieved to hear that consensus at the Board of Trade Municipal Affairs session that I attended with Councillor Vicente and Councillor Power. As you know, I try to attend as many of your events as possible because I value the feedback we get from the Board of Trade. And I don't want to give any window for any other level of government to feel that they can give a different deal to Brampton, that they could say, oh, you know what, there's more of a disjointed approach in Brampton, so we can probably get off cheaper. No, we have the same expectations other big cities in Canada do, and any financial arrangement should be the same on a per capita basis, and the funding model should be the same. We can't accept less for our residents. The one comment I was interested in, and maybe you've received some feedback, is different than the cities, is you said we don't want to risk money allocated to Brampton. And what I've been told from both the provincial ministry and the federal ministry is there is no money right now allocated to Brampton. All the money is allocated, and that's part of the challenge. Did they give you a Board of Trade a separate indication that there's money allocated?
No, we're actually, let me clarify, we're happy to see that the preliminary priority for the frequent rapid transit network now includes Brampton's project. What we were referring to is that the unfortunate circumstance in 2015 where the provincial government at that time had money allocated for Brampton, and because the council at that time rejected that offer, that money went to support Hamilton's LRT. So we don't want the same scenario to happen in this case.
Yeah, so back then there was money on the table and it was itemized. That's gone now. And so there is no allocation right now. Part of the challenge is we have the provincial ministers saying, you know, we like your tunnel idea. You know, I've sat down with Kinga Surma about this, but she says the feds have to add to the infrastructure allocation. We've got the federal ministry saying, we like your idea. We had a very productive meeting with Dominic LeBlanc, and his response is, well, we want the province to match it. But the challenge I identify is they have a funding envelope and everything is already allocated. And so for us to be successful, we have to be able to get them to increase the funding envelope for major infrastructure projects like this. And what I appreciate you recognizing is the potential election cycles, and whether that federal election is in 2025 and the next provincial one won't be for a while, for another 3 years. But both the provincial and federal government are well represented with every seat in the city of Brampton. I think it's in their self-interest to deliver. And just like the argument we made on healthcare, we deserved our fair share, resonated. I think now is the time for us to be just as impassioned about transit. That if you look at the major transit projects happening around the city, around the country. Look, the funding gone to Edmonton, to Calgary, to Ottawa, to Hamilton, to Kitchener-Waterloo, to Scarborough, to Yonge. The Yonge Street extension was done even without going to TPAT. Literally, they didn't even have an environmental assessment. There's no EA, and they got a commitment. So I think the type of momentum and political pressure that we really galvanize for the hospital, my request is I want everyone in the city to help me galvanize that pressure, that we deserve the same type of transit investment, because historically, on a per capita basis, this city has been treated poorly. And so my ask to you is to help us galvanize organizations across the city to fight for our fair share in transit in the same impassioned manner we did in healthcare.
Thank you, Your Worship, Patrick Brown, and you can count on the Brampton Board of Trade. Let's use this 6 months of discussions to get a commitment attached to one of the preferred options.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Todd. And just a final comment, I would like to say thank you to the Brampton Board of Trade for always advocating for the LRT since it was first proposed in 2015. So thank you for staying on top of this issue.
Thank you, Chair Tour.
Next up, if I can please request Chris Drew to present us with his delegation on behalf of the Drew family.
Thank you, Council. Great to be here. And just before I begin, I was reflecting on two individuals. The first, Andrew DeGroot, who passed away suddenly and tragically very recently. Andrew and I met in a very intense experience in 2015 advocating for the LRT. And the very last conversation I had with Andrew the week he passed was encouraging him to watch the council workshop on LRT, and Andrew said that he would be watching it, and we would talk about it further. So I'm thinking about Andrew, and certainly Andrew was very passionate for Brampton. Not necessarily everyone agreed with him, but he was completely fine with that because he was a happy trooper to just continue to advocate for Brampton. The other person I want to recognize, and I don't know if it's been done in this chamber, is George Majuri, whose Twitter handle was TO Area Fan. He was a Wards 2 and 6 constituent who passed away about 2 years ago, and he was a strong advocate for more GO train service in Brampton. So he would have been thrilled to have joined Mayor Brown, Councillor Santos, MPP Graham McGregor on that first Saturday weekend GO train service. So I'm thinking about George and Andrew today when I give this deputation. First and foremost, my parents have been and brother residents of Bramalea since May 1980, strong supporters of transit. And in that light, I just want to first of all thank staff, transit staff, government relations staff, comm staff, all staff at the City of Brampton for their tireless energy and patience. We've sent them lots of questions. There's been many meetings, and they have been absolutely professional, dedicated, thorough. When I compare the conversations that we're having in 2023 to 2015, it's a complete sea change in terms of the level of constructive conversation, positivity. And so again, thank you so much to staff for all of their hard work and energy. And I know Metrolink staff, I've certainly observed, I was at the Brampton Board of Trade event where CEO Phil Verster spoke, and he was very complimentary to Brampton Transit staff, so I wanted to mention that. First and foremost, I'm a big believer that this LRT is going to be built. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And it's the same thing for the Queen Street Highway 7 BRT. It's a question of when, not if. Brampton's population is increasing. It's an attractive place for people to visit. The transit ridership is going exceedingly well. So it's just a question of when, not if, and that's where your advocacy comes in to the federal and provincial governments. I just don't want Brampton to have the same mistake of a lack of investment, and that's what my generation of the 1980s, 1990s, and early 2000s felt. Until Zoom came along, there was basically no substantial transit investment in Brampton. That's almost 30 years. And many of you are parents of young kids. I don't think you want your children to miss out on 30 years of transit investment. That cannot happen again. The way Brampton grew and got around, we just can't repeat that. We need substantial transit investment. And yes, sometimes that's expensive. But you know what is also expensive? Highways. Highways are also expensive. And in society, sometimes we talk about highways of saving people time and creating jobs. Well, so can BRT and LRT. So I don't want us to forget when we're having these conversations with MPPs and MPs that the experience of travel of transit riders is forgotten. And there's a lot of focus on highways, highways, highways. Transit riders matter too. Your constituents who are every day on those buses, and you're driving around or out in the community, you see them waiting for the bus, they deserve significant investment. And the problem is, if you don't invest now, as we see, it only gets more expensive. You see in the staff report how much more expensive it is compared to 2015. And that cost will continue to go up because that's just life and reality. So you have to seize the moment. In my closing remarks, I just want to mention that there are some significant advantages now to what we saw in 2015 in terms of the context of Brampton. And Todd touched on this a little bit. Development applications in downtown Brampton, some of which you've approved. More housing in downtown Brampton. That's extremely exciting, and that benefits the entire city. There's significant progress on the Queen Street Highway 7 Bus Rapid Transit project. And I actually think of the Main Street LRT and the Queen Street BRT as one project. It's one spine for Brampton. There's such an opportunity for riders from all parts of the city to transfer and use both lines. I think we need to stop thinking about it as the main LRT and the Queen BRT and say to the governments, build both. It's one line. It's a networked plan. The other positive development is the pathway to lift the special policy area in downtown Brampton. And that's been through the hard work of city staff and the TRCA to move the flood mitigation through an EA. There's recommendations in terms of how you lift the special policy area, and that's going to encourage more housing and more growth in downtown Brampton, and that benefits the entire city. In my final minute, I just want to mention a scenario where, let's say you have a new resident at the Brampton Gateway Shoppers World situation, but they work along Queen Street, or maybe they work in wards 9 and 10. Well, what's the best way to get from Gateway at Steeles and Main to wards 9 and 10 or Queen Street East? It's to get on a main LRT and then get on a Queen Street BRT. That's a fast, efficient connection. And that's what Brampton deserves. I just want to mention really quickly this amazing book. I recommend you all get it, called Trains, Buses, People. There's a second edition out that comes that focuses on Canadian cities, and the author has done an amazing job of documenting what makes successful transit projects in cities in the U.S. and Canada. And there's great topics in here on things like density, service level, travel time. And just again, I want to emphasize the travel time part. Brampton transit riders deserve good travel time when they're on transit. That means dedicated space. That means reliability, that means frequency, that means capacity. Yes, that is expensive, but again, highways are expensive. And I also want to compliment staff because they've done a great job, and I have 9 seconds left, they've done a great job in documenting in Appendix 1 and in Table 5 comparables to other transit projects. So I encourage council, I encourage the MPPs and MPs to continue to advocate for significant investment in the Main Street LRT. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Before I go to members that are on the board, just want to say thank you for acknowledging Andrew and George and their contributions to this discussion. I know they were very passionate about this, and I believe I met you at the same debate in 2015, and that's when we all became friends. And in you, we have one of our strongest advocates for transit, and I get a volunteer researcher. And that gives me all the information that I need about transit projects, not just in Brampton, but across GTA. So thank you for always keeping us informed and for your delegation. And on the board, I have Councillor Vicente that would like to speak. So Councillor Vicente, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Chris, for delegating here today. And you've made so many valid points to anyone who is listening. That right there in a nutshell is the crux of why we are here today, to finish this transit corridor and to make it work for the benefit of the residents of Brampton. So thank you, Chris, for being here. Mr. Chair, are we bringing forward then the report at this time?
Yeah, if we wish to, we can do that.
Yes, we can do so. I'll move, first of all, for receipt of delegations, and thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Okay, we'll hear from Mayor Brown before we consider receiving the delegation.
Oh,
Chris,
there may be a question.
Thank you, Chris. I just wanted to thank you as well. I think Councillor Tour and Councillor Vicente have expressed this, but it's like free staffing we get at the City of Brampton. You have been an encyclopedia of knowledge, and you find tidbits of information from decades ago that only a very keen researcher would find. And so I know many of us rely on your advice and your feedback, I know your family have a long history here in Brampton, and I just want to say I'm grateful to have a volunteer transit expert giving us guidance, and it's a big value add for the city. So I wanted to say that, thank you. The second thing I want to say is you made a comment that really resonated with me about your generation missing out on that type of investment. And the one thing, I'm sure you've got some stats that back this up. Every time, every decade that a city looks at transit investment or a country looks at transit investment, they get scared by the price tag. But 10 years after the fact, you look back at the price tag, or 20 years or 30 years, you say to yourself, I can't believe, that was the cost intimidation. The biggest regrets that I've seen in transit policy is the infrastructure we didn't build. No one regrets building that subway extension or that transit extension. We do regret the ones that were passed on. And I look at the inflationary pressures. It's extraordinary. You just look at the cost escalations with the Yonge Street line right now, and how the government's grappling with that. I hope that this generation of leadership on our city doesn't squander the opportunity to make the investments necessary, because the cost to do what we want to do now, 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, or 30 years from now, will be far greater and far more intimidating than the cost today. And so I'm a big believer in seizing the opportunity, and maybe at some point we can get some feedback from you, because I know you probably have those stats of what it would have cost to build transit in 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010, and again today.
If I could just really quickly comment on that. In my lifetime, in Bramalea, they widened the region, the city, widened Queen Street. What did they not put in or put in the provision for? Bus rapid transit in my lifetime. What do we have to do now? Go back and look at that segment. It's a lot more expensive. Had they future-proofed it then, it would be a lot less expensive to do it now. That was very poor foresight, unfortunately. But the good news is none of council was there at the time. The MPPs weren't there at the time. The MPs weren't there at the time. So you have a new generation on council. You have a new generation of MPs and MPPs to get it right for this generation and to move forward. And the other example I would use is Union Station. There's a streetcar tunnel that goes into Union Station that was opened, again, in my lifetime in 1990. But what do they have to do now? Retrofit that tunnel and spend additional money, because it was effectively built too small for the transit growth they've experienced, especially you've seen along the waterfront, and the City of Toronto is now basically competing with Brampton for significant transit funding for the waterfront LRT, because there's housing and jobs along there. So again, these are just examples of you have to invest, you have to future-proof. The Main Street LRT is future-proof to go further north, whether it's tunnel or surface, and staff have done a lot of detailed work on the project right now. And because you mentioned cost, I just have to get this in really quickly, because Eglinton Crosstown is in the news all the time. The Ottawa LRT is in the news. The good news is, just because something happened in the past doesn't mean it's going to happen to us, because there's learning experiences. So Alex and his team have read the 100 recommendations from the Ottawa LRT. Phil Verster and Metrolinx understand of how they can do procurement better in the future, and they're actually working on implementing that in Hamilton. So in terms of cost concerns or risk, I think it's actually a great opportunity for Brampton, because we can learn from the past, from the recent examples, and implement those provisions. There's lots of things that can be done, early works, geo-testing, breaking up contracts, different forms of procurement to make sure these projects actually do stay on time and on budget. So I don't want people to get fearful that just because there were challenges with Eglinton or challenges with Ottawa, that somehow that's automatically going to happen to Brampton. Absolutely not. Alex and his team, who are experts and professionals, can absolutely ensure this project goes better, working with Metrolinx. So I just wanted to comment on that cost part.
Chris, my father was born in London, England, so as a child, we'd go and visit relatives there, and I remember, we'd always use the tube system, and I've been in many cities around the world, and that, by far seems to be superior than most. A good example to learn from, but, they made those investments early on, and so they've got an incredible transit system that is used because it's more convenient than any other form of transit. And maybe we can learn, from great transit systems. You talk about learning from experiences in Canada. We should learn from the great international examples of how they did it right. I remember at Queen's Parks getting some advice on transit policy, but some of the mistakes that are made in Toronto, and looking at the choice they made on the Gardiner Expressway in terms of being elevated, or the Allen Expressway ending at Angleton, and they made those decisions out of fear for cost decades ago. Imagine if they had have done what they actually envisioned at the time, the cost to do it compared to what it would be today. And so I just look at some of the mistakes made, and I say to ourselves, as a growing city, as a young city, respectfully in terms of, you know, the new subdivisions, we have an opportunity to learn from all these mistakes and get it right.
And opportunities for intensification in downtown Brampton and on the Queen Street corridor, and that benefits the entire city. So the provincial and federal governments, one other quick thing, 30 seconds, is in 2015, we were not in this chamber, the delegations, the staff reports, the conversation among councillors or MPs or MPPs, the word housing crisis was not mentioned at all. That's very different right now. 2023, we have a housing crisis. It's clearly a priority. It's being debated all the time, provincially and federally. The LRT and the BRT are excellent at supporting housing supply, so that's another reason to invest. It completely aligns with provincial and federal priorities in terms of significant investment in public transit.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Chris. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Vicente to receive both these delegations. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, thank you. This motion carries. And we will be bringing forward the staff report, item 10.2.8, regarding the LRT extension study update. Councillor Vicente, do you wish to speak at this time?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you again to our delegations. And having gone through the report many times, I first of all want to thank staff for having walked us through this journey over the past 5 years to get us to this point today. We're all very appreciative of your efforts and in helping us and assisting us, not just in understanding the technical side of this and getting us to a point where we can submit designs and plans to the provincial and federal government, but also to our government relations team who have helped us over the past few years to tell the story about this project to our federal and provincial partners so that we can be positioned and poised to look for funding partners for this. So that's my first thing. Thank you to staff for all of your work. I also want to thank the organizations and individuals who submitted correspondence that is found on our agenda here today. Their support and their encouragement for us as a city to move this forward today is very important. And, you know, the mayor, members of council, and myself, we have been talking about this nonstop. At every opportunity that we have with ministers, we bring this up. And they're excited. They're excited about the potential that is here in Brampton. Brampton is a place where the numbers tell the story. Our ridership since the pandemic has been the highest, the fastest growing ridership of any city in Canada. So there is no better place, no better time for our provincial and federal partners to provide funding for a project of this scale. We talk about housing, and thank you, Chris, for bringing that up. More now than ever, the need for housing. And when you look at geographically, Brampton's location within the GTA, on the Kitchener line, and within Peel, we're in the right place at the right time to fund something of this size. The mayor, myself, and members of council have also been clear that we have a preference with regards to the two options that staff have undertaken to study. And so with that in mind, I just want to ask if the clerk can bring up a amended recommendation, and I'll just read it. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And this would replace the current recommendation in 2, and that would be that staff be directed to have further dialogue with Metrolinx and provincial officials to help inform the tunnel option, which is the alignment unanimously supported by City Council to advance funding advocacy, which could then be taken through the Transit Project Assessment Process, or TPAP, and report back in approximately 6 months on the outcome of these discussions. And so I would ask for a committee's support of that. I would also like to ask the clerk if we can add in number 4 that copies of this report and of this motion be sent to our federal MPs as well as to our provincial MPPs. And I'd also like, Mr. Clerk, for us to forward the correspondence that we have on the agenda today to the MPs and the MPPs. And I do have one question through you, Mr. Chair, and in line with some of the delegations and comments, and just so that people who are wondering, can staff just provide a very high-level explanation of why we need to engage in dialogue now with Metrolinx in the province?
Through the chair to Councillor Vicente, the dialogue with the province and the federal government are to explain the business case benefits in investments for futuring the city in terms of its development, especially in the downtown. This dialogue has been going on for some time already with the different levels of government, and there has been, the federal government, no positive comments in the past and some advocacy that's been done, and we're continuing our efforts with the provincial side. So to make sure that as we go along with any project like this, that they understand the elements of the project and how it contributes to the goals of the province and the goals of the federal government as well. And that's primarily the advocacy part.
Okay, thank you very much, and Mr. Chair, and I would just also reiterate from one of the delegations that within the report, it's an excellent report, there is a table 5, which does a comparison of costs for major transit projects like this one, and also Appendix 1 has some additional information with comparatives. So this is within it is within our ability to ask for this, and so good luck to staff and to members of council as we continue to start that dialogue now with the information that we have before us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Vicente. If I can please request the clerk to read the motion that is being put forward by Councillor Vicente.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to members of committee. So, Councillor Vicente is moving 2 motions. The first is to replace staff recommendation 2 with the following: that staff be directed to have further dialogue with Metrolinx and provincial officials to help inform the tunnel option, which is the alignment unanimously supported by Brampton City Council to advance funding advocacy, which could then be taken through the Transit Project Assessment Process, TPAP, and report back in approximately 6 months on the outcome of these discussions. And the second amendment from Councillor Vicente is to amend staff recommendation 2 to add, as shown in red on the screen, and to provide a copy of the report and associated correspondence with the Brampton area MPs and MPPs. And there will be another recommendation added to this to receive the correspondence 10.4.1 on today's agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. So with this amended motion that is moved by Councillor Vicente, request a vote on this, and all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, this motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and thank you, Councillor Vicente. Moving on from this item, next item is item 6.5, a delegation from Tracy Camino, Vice President of Operations, and Ashley Blair, Activities Coordinator for Holland Christian Homes, Inc., regarding request for funding for Holland Christian Homes application for the Seniors Active Living Center program. Welcome, Tracy and Ashley. You both have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Can you hear us?
Yes, we're able to hear you.
I'm just trying to start my video. Oh, there we go. First of all, we just would like to say thank you for having us here today, Mayor and councilors and city staff. And we'd just like to acknowledge Councillor Braw. Thank you very much for acknowledging Nursing Week. We're obviously here at Holland Christian Homes celebrating all of our wonderful nurses that work with us here. We've come to you today to speak to you with regards to our Seniors Active Living Centers program. We at Holland Christian Homes have been operating a Seniors Active Living Centers program in our community for the past 15 years. It's a very important part of our community. It's very important for our seniors to keep them active, to keep them out of hospital, to make sure that we are helping our seniors age in place. We serve over more than 800 seniors in Holland Christian Homes on a daily basis. And the reason why we're coming to you today is that we are coming to make our last request for one-time funding in the amount of $13,832. This is the minimum municipal contribution required under our Seniors Active Living Centers program. And with that support, we then would qualify for the Ontario government portion in the amount of $42,700. So HCH, we are one of 3 SELF programs in the Brampton area. And it does, again, promotes programs and services for our seniors, which Ashley will speak to in a few seconds. We were not aware, unfortunately, of the new process to apply for these funds via the Brampton Advanced Fund. So we missed that opportunity, and that's why we're here today to hopefully get your support for the municipal contribution we need. Otherwise, we will not qualify for the other portions. We know that for next year we will, and we've already spoken to the Advanced Brampton Fund, and we know that we will be eligible and we'll be able to apply for that for next year. But this year, unfortunately, we did miss that, and we weren't aware. So that is what we are here today, is to ask for the $13,832. So I'm going to let Ashley just share with you a little bit about why this program is so important.
Good morning, Patrick Brown and council members. I'm just going to list some highlights from the programs that we do currently offer. So right now we have 36 group and programs currently running, 60 hours of in-person programming each week, capacity for 800 participants across all programs each week, and support from over 20 plus tenant volunteers. With COVID restrictions lifted, almost all of our programs have reopened and life at HCH has returned to normal. Many of our tenants are excited to return to seeing their friends and socializing at many of the programs that we offer. Groups currently running vary from 5 participants to well over 100 participants. Our last bi-monthly birthday party had 230 people in attendance, not including our volunteers, all of which were very happy with the opportunity to enjoy each other's company and socialize. With our tenants being stuck in their apartments the last many years, we are looking forward to not only helping with their physical well-being with programs that we offer, such as Nordic pole walking, yoga, music and movement, Tai Chi, chair fitness, but also on their mental health, with which we use tea socials, speakers corners, education sessions, armchair travels, concerts, bus trips, karaoke, art expressions, our bi-monthly birthday party, and more. With doing these things, we're helping them stay healthy, active, and at home, aging in place, and hopefully helping with less hospitalizations. The Towers Activity Coordinator oversees every activity that runs at Holland Christian Homes, offering programs to the over 1,000 long-term care and retirement tenants that live here. There are currently, like I said, 36 programs that run independently, Senior for Senior programs with support from the Tenant Activity Coordinator and under the direct supervision of the Activity Coordinator. With the help of both the municipal and provincial funding, the Towers Activities is excited to continue rebuilding our program as we recover from the losses of the pandemic and continue to offer educational, social, physical activities to older adults in our community.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
We can take any questions now.
Thank you for that delegation, Tracy and Ashley, and I have Councillor Medeiros on the board to speak. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the delegation. I know on an annual basis, Holland Christian Homes comes to council or sends a request, which the money is used to leverage other investments from the province. Can you just speak to, in terms of timelines, is there, because our usual process is that after delegation, we send it to staff to prepare a report. I know there's long history with Holland Christian Homes. I don't know if my colleagues want to chirp in, but just in terms of timelines, is this, could it wait for a council decision next week?
I believe so, yes. I mean, I know that the province has been already asking us for whether there was a decision or not, and I know that we were supposed to appear as a delegation previously, but that one got canceled, so we have been kind of delayed. So it is important for us to get an answer as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I guess to staff, if we refer this to next week's council, does that give enough time to staff to prepare a background note for members of council so they can get an appreciation for everything that Holland Christian Home does.
Through the chair to Councilor Medeiros, yes, we could work with the finance team and get a report back for next week.
Okay, great. So I'm happy to refer this to next council. And other than that, thank you. I know Holland Christian Homes, you guys do a great job, and I know Councillor Keenan, myself, and Mayor Brown, we have strong admiration for all the work that Holland Christian Home does, and especially engaging our seniors. So, you know, I'm pretty confident report will be ready for next week, and we'll make a decision next Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Medeiros. I have a motion moved by Councillor Medeiros to refer the delegation to staff for a report back at our next council meeting. Requesting vote on this. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, this motion carries. Thank you, Tracy and Ashley, for that delegation, and happy Nursing Week. We shall move on to next item, item 6.6, a delegation from Sylvia Roberts regarding item 10.2.6 for Brampton Transit 2023 to 2027 business plan.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts. Can I get a little bit of extra time? It's 160 pages of report to speak to.
Sure, that should be okay. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts. I'd like to commend Brampton Transit. They've done a fantastic job through the pandemic. There's really not a playbook to deal with that, and they've done a phenomenal job dealing with that. I would also like to note that the 5-year business plan is much more accessible than basically any city document I've seen. Whenever the city puts out budgets and stuff, I'm constantly yelling at the city. Peter has seen many emails from me complaining about documents not being accessible. However, the document passed all the tests that I put it through. So very pleased about that. Next slide, please. So one of the nice things about Brampton Transit is they're very transparent and accessible and forthcoming with information. So I was able to ask them nicely for information on ridership. Before the pandemic, I had basically been telling them continuously that the transit system is capacity constrained. Meaning you add the service, the ridership will show up. And the 2022 ridership data shows that. You'll notice the AM peak starts earlier because people have to get to work, and the buses are so overcrowded, they can't consistently make that. So people are starting to move earlier. You look at the PM peak, and it's pretty flat for multiple hours because a rush hour is just being blown out completely in time because people need to get home from work and from school and all that stuff. There's a huge amount of demand that is not being met from the ridership. The previous business plan, also, I think I commented that by the end of 2018, the last business plan, just because of how much the transit system had grown, had become obsolete just because we were way behind the curve on this stuff. Next slide, please. So here's the Saturday boardings. If you looked at the previous slide, the peak of the peak for ridership is only up a little bit, and during the weekdays, and it's around that is where we've seen significant growth on the weekdays. But it's also not just that rush hour is lasting longer, but people are deferring a huge amount of trips. So we've seen fantastic growth on Saturday boardings. It is over 20% over 2018. Next slide, please. Here's Sunday. It's up 26% over 2018. These are massive increases. So when you give the service hours, they're going to blow through the targets. If you actually, next slide, please. So one of the issues we have is that the 12% is a perfectly reasonable number. Most transit agencies would be perfectly happy to get a 5% year over year. For Brampton, 12% you'd think is pretty good. However, we are on track to blow through that wildly to degrees that even I, who has been told by Brampton Transit, I am excessively optimistic in my numbers, even I could not have predicted it. The ridership increase for the first quarter of 2023 is up 30% over 2019. These numbers are massive. The numbers of annual service hours are nowhere close to meeting it. We're going to blow past the 2023 numbers, 2024 numbers, probably 2025 numbers, more likely than not. And honestly, there's a reasonable chance we're going to blow through the 2026 target. 30% over 2019 numbers puts us at 40 million. But that's ridership based on the service hours that were being delivered already, which don't account for the hours that are in the 2023 budget. So once you pass those, we are very easily going to blow through the 2026 service hours. And as far as I know, if you gave Brampton Transit 150,000 service hours, which still wouldn't be enough to keep up with the ridership, can Brampton Transit actually add that many service hours one year? Do you have the physical capacity to train that many people? It's a large number, but it's also less than we need. So in order to keep up with this, we also need to look at additional things. For example, the articulated buses have come in handy significantly on Kennedy Road. I don't think that's a contest. I think Brampton Transit would agree. The articulated buses have come in handy, and it would be nice to have some on Kennedy Road permanently. And when you run articulated buses that are very credited, they actually save an enormous amount of money because they cost a bit more to operate than a 40-foot bus, but they also can carry significantly more. So when you have a full 60-foot bus versus comparable 40-foot buses, it's a noticeable savings in terms of it for the city. Next slide, please. So my recommendations are that Brampton Transit comes back at some point with the report on how to increase the capacity to deliver service hours, because even if they were at maximum capacity with the current capacity for training operators, and you basically told them, train that many operators, and we are going to give you the money to train operators nonstop for the next 5 years, they still couldn't meet the demands of the service hours. So I don't expect them to be able to come back and say, yes, next year we will be able to increase the number of operators we can train by 100%. But council needs that report in front of them so they can make decisions on how to proceed. Because the amount of service hours being planned are nowhere near sufficient for it. And then we need to actually start moving on using that capacity. So maybe that will be in next year's budget or the year after's budget, but we need to start looking at more hours than planned in there because we've already blown completely past the ridership targets. Brampton Transit really needs a service hour buffer, which means given a block of hours, it's more than planned. And the reason is because some years are like, okay, we're gonna grow 12%, and that's a pretty good number. And then ridership goes up by 30%. And if you have it so, well, we're gonna look at it the next budget. If this happened, so let's say this happened when it wasn't the pandemic. So they'd be preparing their budget for 2023 based on the early numbers, like, oh, look, it's up 10%, and then they put that forward, and then they submit the budget, and it gets approved, and then the budget happens, and ridership is up 30%, and the lag time effects are going to be an issue. We saw that in the 2020 budget, where 2019 got a bunch of service hours, because ridership growth was massive, but then we went to implement it, well, ridership wasn't up significantly because Brampton Transit hadn't been able to implement the hours yet. And then you roll around to February 2020 and ridership is up 20%, but you only added 20,000 service hours, which was nowhere near enough. So Brampton Transit needs a buffer because otherwise you're gonna keep running into that where you're gonna add a bunch of service hours and then, oh, because of capacity constraints and training time, it doesn't look like it goes up that much. And then you're gonna get a huge increase in ridership once the effects hit. And that causes big issues where like, this year we're gonna train a huge amount of operators and the next year we're gonna train 20%. It's not sustainable for transit industry to fluctuate that much. There needs to be a buffer to smooth out those changes. Brampton Transit before the pandemic was achieving noticeable surplus. I believe in the 2016, 2017, 2018, the surpluses would have been enough to build an entire Zoom line between the surpluses. It was at least $20 million. that's probably what you'd be looking at to build a Kennedy Zoom line. And because of how much you're looking at overshooting the ridership targets, there's going to be a noticeable surplus. There's likely to be a noticeable surplus, even despite fuel being way more expensive than planned. And so if the city dedicates it, so the surpluses from Brampton Transit go to the capital funding, that means in response to increased ridership, this Brampton Transit will be able to actually afford to buy the additional Zoom bus that needs capacity, or the additional regular buses, or building an additional Zoom line in order to meet that demand without the city needing to worry as much about coming up with where are we going to get $20 million? Because it's the savings from the huge increase of ridership is going to buy you more buses so you can accommodate the needs for the ridership. And so the Brampton Transit is effectively paying for itself in terms of building out that capacity. Kennedy needs a Zoom line. I understand for logistical reasons why Bramley need to come first, even though having significantly lower ridership, because there's the gigantic gap in the north-south Zoom line between Main Street and Bramley. So Bramley is important, we need to build it, but Kennedy also needs it. And having the dedicated capital funding will help Brampton Transit be able to go back to its previous cadence of building a Zoom line or major extension every year. We also need to look at curbside bus lanes for a precursor for full BRT. Steeles between Shoppers World and Bramley Go is going to have a gigantic number of buses running on between the 11, the 511, and the 504. It's going to be so much that bus lanes on Steeles could provide massive time savings for resident and also operational time for Brampton Transit, because I've noticed that the headways keep slipping because of just how bad congestion is getting. And then we need to look at additional terminals in Northeast Brampton, which I'm sure Councillors Singh and Councillors Tour are well aware of the need for, and then also in the Southwest, where we're looking at a new secondary plan and building out that area. So that's actually planned in the budget. Thank you. That's my delegation.
Thank you so much, Sylvia, for that delegation. And thank you for planting that seed for the needs on the northeast side of the city. Those comments are well received. Would like to also acknowledge the work done by Alex and his team. That's good feedback that we hear, that your reports are accessible than others at the city. So thank you so much for everybody that puts in an effort to do that. And hopefully we can reflect that on our other reports. I have a couple of speakers on the board. Councillor Santos, you're up first.
Thank you so much through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Sylvia, for the delegation, and happy to receive the delegation and bring the report forward at this time, if that's okay.
There's a request to bring the report forward. If council is okay with that, we should be
So
doing
move
that.
to receive the delegation at this time and then bring the report forward?
Yep. So motion moved by Councillor Santos to receive the report.
No, the delegation.
Sorry, to receive the delegation. My apologies. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. And bringing the report forward, that is item 10.2.6, the Brampton Transit 2023-2027 business plan.
Thank you.
Councillor Santos, you still have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. As I was reading the business plan for the next 5 years, I noticed there was, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but there wasn't mention of the Queen Street BRT. And I'm sorry if I missed it, but did I miss it? Or I didn't see it as I was reading it. I know that there were other connections and priorities like the northeast and the northwest and the southwest corridors, but I don't want to not highlight the Queen Street BRT.
And through the chair to Councillor Santos, the BRT along Queen Street, the Chinguzi Zoom that we're looking at launching in 2024, all incorporated details of the summary in this report. The appendices, or I'm sorry, the actual council workshop included the details of the work that was done on that. So we have factored in the Queen Street BRT, and I apologize if there wasn't a specific mention in here, but it has been incorporated in all the information here in terms of the assumptions and the actual service hours and the service demands.
I just want to make sure, because when I was looking at, I think it was figure 3 with the map, the Chinguzi BRT looked like the map was, or the line was along Steeles and not Queen. And because I didn't read like the words Queen Street BRT in the actual business plan, I was really concerned that we perhaps missed it. I know that we have it because I know we talk about it all the time. I just want to make sure when we signal to the public, or if this is a document that we're using to advocate to the province or the federal government, that it's in there, and not give them the opportunity to say, oh, well, you didn't mention it in your 5-year plan.
Yeah, and through the chair, very good point. I'll allow Doug to, Doug will speak more on Queen Street, but just specifically on the Chinguacousy and the Steeles part, as part of the Zoom Chinguacousy that we're looking at implementing in the future, but that also ties into the study that we're doing along Steeles, which is another corridor that we're looking at a higher order BRT and working with Metrolinx on that. And Doug, I don't know if you want to add more to the Queen Street.
Sure, thank you. And through the chair, Councillor, yes, we've kind of provisioned for additional service to be added along the corridor in anticipation of a Queen Street BRT. Realistically, when we look at the completion of the current study that's going on and when some of that work would be completed, it would be kind of towards the end of the plan is where we would see that. So I think as we go through our annual service plans, those specific details for the Queen Street BRT would be more embedded into that. But as Alex mentioned, some of the service hours are kind of provisioned for to support a Queen Street BRT later on in the plan.
Okay, I don't know if it's, I know it's not too late to have some sort of appendix or like mention somewhere in that report so that it's not missing, only because that Queen Street BRT has been, you know, well, you've heard many residents come and delegate, and students from York University and otherwise talking about that Queen BRT route and increasing service, and obviously it's a priority and has been for us since last term as well. So I know the mayor has a couple of questions too, but if we can, I don't know if it's possible, take time to find a way to incorporate into that business plan. That would be great. It just is consistent with all of our advocacy efforts.
Thank you, Councillor.
Sorry. Just a thank you. We can take that back and take a look. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Santos. And Mayor Brown, you have the floor.
Similar vein, I think there's a great basis in this report. You know, based on the conversations we've had today, you got a council that is focused on transit and ambitious on transit. And so what I'd like to see in this is not only the Queen Street BRT that I know Councillor Singh talks about every time I speak to him, that needs to be very visible in the plan. I'd like to refer this to finance so we can show residents what the financial analysis and plan is, how we're going to achieve this, so we can sort of govern ourselves accordingly. A lot of people say, you know, I love what you're suggesting, but what's the plan? And I know it's a little bit complicated because there's federal and provincial contributions, and I'm finding that there's asterisks in the report that are sort of qualifiers. If, for example, if the gas tax revenue stopped, or if, you know, cost sharing changed, you know, we can have those qualifications, but based on the current circumstances, you know, what is our plan to be able, what is the financial alignment with this business plan? And so maybe the motion would be to refer this to finance for comments in collaboration with transit. And then another item would be the one that Councillor Santos recommended, to see the plans for the Queen Street BRT fully incorporated into this.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. And with that, I have a motion. Alex, you have comments?
No,
Thank you. Thank you. And with that, I have a motion moved by Mayor Brown, as seen on the screen here. All in favor? Any opposed? And seeing none, thank you, and the motion carries.
Incorporated, yeah.
Okay, and moving up, our next item is 7.1 for Government Relations Matter. Chris Ethier, CEO's office, is here with a presentation for Committee on Government Relations Matters. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. We'll just wait for the presentation. Next slide, please. Thank you and good morning. Through the chair, I'll begin with regional matters. Staff have reviewed the regional council agenda and reached out to relevant departments for comments. Next slide, please. We begin with item 8.2, a FOR information report titled Climate Change Master Plan Progress Report 2022. The report provides an update on the region's work related to reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and other climate action initiatives. Regional staff point to opportunities for a greater role in the community, working with area municipalities and community stakeholders to lead or support under-resourced climate change actions or shared priorities. This includes the City of Brampton-initiated Center for Community Energy Transformation and Peel Residential Energy Program, which is an initiative in collaboration with the City of Mississauga and Town of Caledon. Regional staff observed that in light of Peel's population growth, additional investment will be needed to implement and realize regional climate action targets. Next slide, please. Next, we have item 13.1, affordable housing, investments needed to close the gap. The affordable housing system in Peel and across the province have been unable to keep up with the dramatic increases in demand for housing and homelessness supports over the last decade. Therefore, city staff support the ongoing advocacy to all levels of government to provide the necessary funding and supports to address the current housing crisis. A partnership approach across all levels of government, as well as private sector and nonprofit sector, is necessary to deliver the full mix of housing options to meet Brampton's needs. The city staff recognize Brampton's role in addressing housing affordability, and we have committed to working with all stakeholders to deliver the appropriate mix of affordable housing, including purpose-built rental. Next slide, please. Item 13.2 is a staff report that reiterates a recommendation to replace the existing Welcoming Streets pilot program with a redesigned, place-based regional outreach program. The report proposes interim temporary solutions to enhance supports in Mississauga and around the Wilkinson shelter in Brampton. As per previous updates to council, to prevent disruption in service in downtown Brampton, Regional Council approved staff's recommendation to provide up to $150,000 to the city so the existing Welcoming Streets program can continue in downtown Brampton until the end of 2023. The new and improved regional outreach program enhancements will not be implemented until 2024, and city staff observed that the City of Brampton should be consulted on design of the new place-based approach. Next slide, please. Next, we have a discussion item 19.1 regarding the Sheridan College International Student Summit and Charter. Brampton's housing team has been working alongside Sheridan College as one of the selected applicants to receive the Housing Catalyst Capital Project funding, which would be used to complete a comprehensive student need assessment study in collaboration with community partners to support the increased demand of housing for students in Brampton. The charter will support the city in understanding the key needs of students as they study and settle in Brampton, ensuring the creation of equitable and complete communities for all. Next slide, please. Last item I wanted to flag for you is a motion requesting funding to implement the Welcoming Streets pilot program in Cooksville, Moulton, and Port Credit in Mississauga. Given the city's experience in implementing the Welcoming Streets program in downtown Brampton, it would be difficult to implement the program in additional areas for the summer. At the same time, the new outreach program is set to start in 2024. Next slide, please. Moving on to provincial updates, there are several announcements that may have a direct impact to the city. One is the new $25 million over 2 years for the Anti-Hate Security and Prevention Grant to help address the rise of hate incidents against religious and minority groups. The grant could also be used for things such as building upgrades, installing cameras, training staff, and security assessments. The grant is anticipated to open for application intake this summer. Next slide, please. Last Thursday, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing announced the start of the procurement process for third parties to conduct audits for the finances of 6 select municipalities, including the City of Brampton and the Region of Peel. Once the selection process is complete, the audits are expected to be conducted later this year. The province indicated that the audits would demonstrate how the selected municipalities have managed their funds, delivered services, and made decisions with regards to local infrastructure projects. The audits are also to help develop future provincial policies and programs supporting long-term municipal financial sustainability and housing-related infrastructure investments. We'll provide council with updates as information becomes available. Next slide, please. Also last week, the province announced $51 million in new measures to help police identify and dismantle organized crime networks and address auto theft. This funding includes a new community safety grant starting this year, where OPP, municipal, and First Nations police services will be eligible to apply for funding for extra tools, supports, and resources to fight and prevent auto theft in their communities. Next slide, please. The next two slides provide an update on Bill 97, the Helping Home Buyers Protecting Tenants Act, which proposes significant changes to the provincial planning framework and increased support for renters in Ontario. We flagged this previously over the past number of weeks, given the province's soliciting comments to the proposed changes through 12 ERO and RRO postings, 9 of which the city will be commenting on, with 3 different commenting deadlines. Attached to today's presentation is the second of 3 reports brought forward by staff to council, aligning with the 3 commenting deadlines associated with Bill 97. Next slide, please. The attached recommendation report focuses on 5 ERO and ORR postings that the city will be commenting on, with commenting deadlines of May 21st. The postings propose amendments to the Planning Act, Municipal Act, City of Toronto Act, and the Residential Tenancies Act. Some of the key proposed changes include adding the provision of site plan control permissions for developments of 10 or fewer units under certain conditions, and increased protections for tenants against various types of evictions, such as protecting against bad faith renovation evictions by requiring the landlord to provide written updates to the tenant on the status of renovations, and giving the tenant the right of first refusal to occupy the unit again when the unit is ready for occupancy. The detailed proposed amendments and city comments can be found in the attached recommendation report. The final staff report aligning with the June 5th, 2023 commenting deadline will be brought to council on May 24th. It includes the proposal to integrate the current provincial policy statement and a place to grow into a new provincial planning statement. I'd like to acknowledge our colleagues in the planning department for their work to ensure the city provides detailed and comprehensive comments to the province on the above proposed legislative changes. Lastly, while we have not included any relevant federal updates in this week's update, I did want to mention an announcement by the Federal Minister of Public Safety and Brampton MPs announcing $120 million in funding to the province of Ontario to combat guns and gangs. It is part of the $390 million in funding over the next 5 years for provinces and territories for a variety of initiatives, including for police and prevention programs. And thank you. That concludes today's presentation.
Thank you, Chris. I have a question regarding the recent announcement that was at the police headquarters, the funding that's given to Ontario for the auto theft prevention. Out of that funding, there's no clear numbers on, or do we have numbers on how much of that funding is for the Peel Regional Police?
We don't have those numbers at this point.
Okay. And auto theft reminds me, I forgot to give an update that Councillor Keenan has been on the meeting since the beginning. So since about 10:20, so welcome Councillor Keenan. And Councillor Santos, you have the floor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to flag for regional council colleagues who are attending tomorrow regarding the international student file and discussion. So there is interest from other members at the regional table to also endorse the Charter for International Students that Brampton has worked on for the past year and a half, almost 2 years now. That being said, there's also the discussion item that I've put forward, and it may not happen potentially tomorrow, but in the near future, I will be bringing forward a motion to seek endorsement from the regional table to endorse the actual charter itself, as well as asking regional staff to report back on how the region can specifically support the action items within the charter and what we're doing already at the region of Peel with respect to international students. So I wanted to flag that. And the other piece in our work, as folks can recall from our international student work here in Brampton, is forming a task force at the Community Safety Wellbeing Table at the region, specifically for international students. We've already spoken to Chief Nish as well as Commissioner Nancy Pulcinelli on this. There is a little bit resistance apparently on making that happen, and there's another corresponding report on the regional agenda on the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan update, which actually says that the Community Safety Wellbeing Table should just remain focused as is and not add anything else, simply because they don't have additional resources to do so. So we have a little bit of things going on this particular file. And I guess if folks can just pay attention on this with Sheridan delegating tomorrow, it's likely I will refer to the next council meeting in June to keep this file moving along.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. With that, I don't see any more questions on the floor. So I'll take a motion moved by Councillor Keenan to receive the presentation. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, and that motion carries. So moving on, our next item is item 8.5 under the Economic Development section. For councillor question period for this section of the agenda. Seeing there are no questions and no items, we will be moving on to the public question period. No questions from the public as well. And seeing the time before we move on to the corporate services section, would this be an appropriate time for us to break for lunch? If we can do that, please, because I know we're going to have some discussions up ahead. So I don't want to break up the corporate services section in between for lunch. So if we can please recess for lunch. Can we get till 12:30, please? Thank you. Okay, so we are recessed till 12:30 and we will be back then.
Welcome back, everyone. Our next item is going to be part of the corporate service section, 9.2.1, a staff report regarding requests to begin procurement, digital billboard advertising on city property. So this report was first deferred from our March 29th meeting and further deferred from our April 12th meeting. I believe Councillor Deputy Mayor Singh, you held that? You have the floor.
Yeah, the
I held it with just concern about advertising and controlling content, and I know I had a couple of deferrals because had a child at that time, so I wasn't able to attend properly. But I'll work with staff on this to make sure we have control mechanisms, and Chair and Vice Chair of Legislative Services with legal, just to make sure, you know, we have some incidences with the advertising and the community. Yes, Mayor Patrick Brown shaking his head. So making sure we have some control mechanisms in place to have some control over the messaging and removing messaging when needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Singh. Do any members have any questions or comments? Oh, Councillor Plush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So kind of just to summarize what the Deputy Mayor was referring to, we need a policy in the city as to what can be and cannot be advertised on our assets. How do we go about doing that? Have we started that? Because last time I talked to anybody, we didn't have a direct policy that indicated what and what cannot be advertised on the buses. But not just on the buses, sorry Alex, not to throw you
just
under the bus, but
through the chair, I'm not sure
corporate
if
wide.
the appropriate staff is here to answer that, but if not, I can perhaps start that off. So I understand they're on the way. But we do have a policy that governs advertising within the city, and then also we comply with the Canadian standards as well for advertising that we're members of, to ensure that any advertising that potentially could be questionable, we send their way. And then we have also agreements with the third-party advertisers, but I'll just to start it off until we have some staff here that may be able to
So
give
is
more
it that we
detail.
need to strengthen our current policy? Is that what it is? Because I thought the last time we had the discussion, Alex, that we didn't have a clear policy that stopped some people from putting the ads that they had got on our buses. And is the policy strictly for transit, or is it across the corporation?
The corporation has a policy. Perhaps it might be time to review the policy to see if there's any updates that are needed, and that might be part of the discussion that might take care today, or the direction given. But there is a policy in place, and again, the Canadian advertising standards also augment that through the process.
Okay, so what I don't want is for this to start happening, and that policy isn't updated. So can we just put that policy being updated before this is all closed? Or this procurement, is it going to adhere to the new policy? Please.
So through you, Chair Brar, just to advise committee, there is a advertising on city property policy that is in effect for the city.
Yes, but we feel like it's not strong enough.
Maybe I can add a comment, maybe making sure that's culturally sensitive to all the cultures across Brampton. Maybe that might be one thing.
Hi, Tara.
How are you?
Tara, we're talking
Through the
about...
chair, yeah, I missed the question. Sorry.
Sorry, we're okay with the report. What we're talking about, though, is I'm connecting our policy in the city. We don't feel like some of the discussions that we've had with CLT and council, we don't feel like it's strong enough to stop some people from advertising on our assets. Tara, does that have anything to do with you?
Yes.
Oh, perfect.
Yes. So the advertising policy was reviewed last year and approved by council in December of 2022. And that review looked at it was more focused on the review process because it was very outdated, where residents actually had to pay to issue a complaint. There needed to have been 5 complaints in order for a review to be undertaken. But it also, in the overall of the policy, looked at the types of content that would be considered approved for advertising in the city. And in looking at the type of content that or the criteria for advertising, we are bound by the Freedom of Information Act, or
Freedom of expression.
expression.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we can't be we have to sort of find that balance, which when we put the policy forward to council, believed we did have that balance. If council is now suggesting that we don't have the right balance, we can certainly take it back and review it further.
What I don't want to do is shed light on who was able to, the organization that was able to advertise on our buses. That's not what I want to do, but I think Alex knows what I'm referring to, and members of council know what I'm referring to, and we just don't want that kind of type of situation again. So I'm not sure how we go about doing that, if it needs another refresh or look, or if this is a learning exercise where, you know, these things happen, we catch it, take it down, and then change the policy. I guess that's what we do. But
Thank you, Councillor Leshy. I think Councillor Santos just wanted to jump in.
thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I think that since December 2020, we've done a few things. So there's an opportunity to take a look at this policy not only through the Equity Office lens, but also through the work we're doing on Gender-Based Analysis Plus, which looks at overall policy and various training opportunities to catch some of these issues or find any gaps that may exist in policies like this that we didn't catch before. And so there is an opportunity there. That being said, I know that we've been looking at the digital billboards for a while now and wanting to see what revenue we can capture from them. And so I don't know at this point what my colleagues would like to do other than to, I guess, Councillor Singh, you're suggesting we refer it?
No, move it, because I've already referred it.
Okay.
And we can work on the messaging, we can have a meeting with staff.
Okay.
And I'm okay with that, I've already
Okay. So Councillor Singh is going to move it so that we can proceed, but then signaling to staff at this point in time that we have some concerns related to the content of what is being advertised, and if we could find a way forward in order to catch anything that we're concerned about, similar to the situation with the buses, advertising the buses.
Thank you, Councillor Santos.
Through the chair, further to Councillor Santos' comment, Tara and I had a discussion yesterday, and we also need to look at the agreements that we sign and make sure it has the teeth in it so we can enforce our policies.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Singh to approve the staff report. All in favor, all opposed. Thank you. The motion carries. Our next item is 9.3.1, policy regarding breastfeeding in public. Councillor Tour, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to have a discussion on this item. It stems from an email I received from one of my residents. Can't disclose her name, but Mrs. Dhaliwal emailed me, the last name, a very common last name. Mrs. Dhaliwal emailed me earlier last week. She has a 4-month-old daughter, and she's a full-time law student. So she occasionally uses Gore Meadows Community Center and Library to study. It is a very good study space. And she spends a lot of hours there, and alongside her baby, she finds it extremely difficult and also disappointing that currently at the city, whether it's our recreation centers or any other city facility, that we don't have dedicated space where she can nurture her baby. From that came about some questions. One question for public knowledge, I would ask in public here is to Chief Boyce. What is currently our policy at the city regarding this?
Through the chair to Councillor Tour. So City of Brampton is a breastfeeding a feeding-friendly organization, so we do welcome all breastfeeding mothers and children, but you're correct, we do not have dedicated spaces, but what we do is work with the individual to accommodate and find a space that would work depending on their needs and circumstances.
Thank you. And that was noted by my resident as well, that although uncomfortable, whenever she requested, staff at the library and staff at the rec center were helpful in finding dedicated space. But again, it puts them in an uncomfortable position where they have to ask for that versus us proactively providing a space for this. So in light of that, I had quickly drafted up a motion that if the clerk could pull up on the screen, putting forward the motion seconded by Councillor Broad, that if we can basically find a way that across the city, not just at our recreation facilities, but across the city, whether it's at City Hall, any other city-owned facility that we have, that we may have dedicated space for someone that needs to either breastfeed or nurture for their baby in a safe and comfortable space. We often see these spaces at airport lounges, we see them at malls, we see them at a lot of private places. But unfortunately, we currently don't have something like this in a public space setting. So I'd like to put this on the floor and for councillors to have any comments on this.
Thank you, Councillor Tour. Councillor Santos, you have the floor. Thank you so much, through you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate this motion and finding more proactive ways to accommodate parents who either want to breastfeed or bottle feed their children. One thing that I just, and in conversations that we've had in lead up to today, that I just wanted to have folks be cognizant of. Number one, there are some women who choose to breastfeed in public. And highlighting that a private space, only highlighting that a private space is needed, could potentially create a stigma for those mothers who choose to breastfeed in public, and having other folks point them out saying, hey, you got to go into that accommodation. And so I want to make sure that as we're having this conversation to provide more proactive accommodations, that we don't create further stigma associated with mothers who choose to breastfeed in public. I know I did, and I got the stares and I got the looks at the time. I didn't care, but I'm sure other mothers would be disturbed by that. So I think whether that's communication or what have you, I think that also needs to be considered. The other thing is us being very careful in terms of gender stereotypes and making sure that we are inclusive in the way that we position that, in that there may be two gay parents who have an adopted child who actually need a space in private to bottle feed their adopted child, or a mother who is not able to breastfeed and wants a quiet place to also nurture and nurse their child, or a grandparent or an uncle who is taking care of their grandkids at the library or at a community center. So mindful of that, all of that, I do support this, but like I'm just trying to find a way to make sure in the motion that I know it says there in the beginning, the City of Brampton is a breastfeeding friendly organization and welcomes all breastfeeding mothers and children. I don't know, in public, I don't know, but I just want to avoid the stigma that this might cause.
Thank you, Councillor Tour.
So if we can accommodate that in one of the whereases to say that we welcome this in public, and I believe in the resolution and in the staff direction, it is to find an option, and the option is not just for mothers, it is for families, and that encompasses everybody. Or if there's better language around that, I would be happy to take that as an amendment.
Councillor Singh.
Just for clarification, we're not just talking about community facilities. I'm assuming that's why it's a corporate service. We're talking about City Hall and others? Correct. Yeah, okay, thank you. Just, I'll wait for the report otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Singh. So Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so the motion, Councillor Pleshy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm still not comfortable with the motion. You know, I know women have fought for so long and so hard to be able to feed in public. I feel like this could potentially put something out in the public that is exactly like Councillor Santos was referring to. So if maybe Councillor Santos, Councillor Tour can try and wordsmith something that everybody maybe feels a little bit more comfortable with. I think this is also something that we should go out to the public to look at, and if that can be included in there as well. And so as for right now, can we just refer this to council next week?
Thank you, Councillor Palashi. Councillor Santos?
What's the organization?
Speaking to the referral?
Yeah, so speaking to the referral, and this has to be ratified at council anyway, I'm happy to work with Councillor Tour and Councillor Barr to wordsmith it accordingly. But also, Councillor Pleshy brought up a good point in terms of reaching out to maybe one of the organizations to get help on this one. Yeah, and happy to support that, but it could be as simple as, whereas the City of Brampton is a breastfeeding-friendly organization and welcomes all breastfeeding mothers and children and supports women's right to, or parents' right or women's right to breastfeed in public. I don't know, but clearly we're happy to work with Councillor Tour and Brar on it.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. Councillor Lalachi? Okay. Councillor Tour, you have the floor.
So I'm happy if Councillor Santos's amendment to the first whereas, if we can add that in there. Comfortable doing that.
Sorry, through you, Chair Brar, we're in a referral debate at the moment.
Okay,
Council.
Okay, the only reason I don't want to refer is I don't want to. I've left it very open-ended and very general for staff to work on this and report back and come back to us with this, at which point, I guess, we can have public feedback on this.
You don't want to leave it open. You want it direct. You want to tell exactly what's there.
Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a referral right now, so have a motion, Councillor Palashi, to refer back to refer to next council. So Councillor Tour, Councillor Santos, we can alongside me, we can work together to make sure that this motion covers all aspects, making sure that it includes women, includes all genders, and it includes that women also have the right to even breastfeed in public. All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Our next item is 9.5, Councillor question period for this section of the agenda. Do any members have any questions regarding the corporate service section? Are there any members with questions online? Seeing none, we'll move on. Now we can do, now I will pass the chair over to Councillor Vicente to chair the Public Works and Engineering section of the committee agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members of committee. So we had all items in consent or have already been dealt with, and the clerk has confirmed. So all that remains is councillor question period. Do any member of council have a question with regards to the Public Works and Engineering section? Seeing none, I'll then ask the clerk if we have any questions from members of the public. There are none. So with that, I'll now move that we go to the next section of today's agenda, which is corporate services. Community services with Councillor Santos. Excuse me. Yes?
Thank you, members of council. We're now in the community services section of the agenda, and the item 11.2.1 was already dealt with earlier during delegations. So we're at council question period. Do any members of council have questions regarding this section? Seeing none. Public question period. Mr. Clerk, do we have any questions? Thank you very much. Moving on to the next section, legislative services. I believe all of these items, with the exception of 12.2.2, was put into consent. And I can't recall, Mr. Clerk, if we already dealt with this report. Yes, we have. So that report was also already dealt with. Public question period from councilors. Do we have any members of council with questions on legislative services? Seeing none. Public question period, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, which brings us to the referred matters list, which is published quarterly. Do any members have any questions regarding the referred matters list? Seeing none. Public question period, Mr. Clerk. Any questions? Thank you very much. And so now we're going to be moving into closed session. And Mr. Clerk, Councillor Singh?
Just given that we need to talk some of these items through, we could go at 1:15.
Okay, so break okay.
Not with council, just with staff.
And Mayor Brown, question? Oh, no question. Okay, so we will be moving into closed session and recess into closed session. We have a number of items to deal with. Mr. Clerk, if you wouldn't mind summarizing those items for me.
Through you, Chair Santos, there are 3 added items for closed session. They're shown on the screen. 15.1, 15.2 are both open meeting exceptions under Section 239 2B of the Municipal Act. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And 15.3, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board under the exception 2C under Section 239. And I believe there's a request to reconvene at 1:15 in closed session. We just need a mover for this motion.
Yep, so we'll reconvene at 1:15 in closed session, and then when we return, we will report out in open session any direction given by council. Moved by Councillor Vicente. All those in favor to go into closed. That is carried. We will see everyone in closed at 1:15. Thank you. All right, we are now back from closed session, and in the interest of transparency, I will now ask our clerk to summarize our business from in camera.
Chair Santos, members of committee, there were 3 added items to today's agenda for closed session. The first is 15.1. The meeting exception was 239 2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. This item was considered in closed session, and procedural direction was given to refer this matter to the City Council meeting of May 17th. 15.2, again, is the meeting exception is 239 2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. This matter was considered, and direction was given to staff. And finally, added item 15.3, which it was, the meeting exception was 239 2C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Information was received and direction was given to staff on this matter, and that's the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. And now our next item of business is adjournment, moved by Councillor Keenan, that Committee Council now do adjourn to meet again on Wednesday, May 24th, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Go Leafs go. Thank you, everyone, for your time today.